grand final, Panthers versus Broncos. I'm really interested about this because, like, just to boil it down, no team except for the Panthers has a forward pack that can rival the Broncos. And the two players that are in that Panthers forward pack who have started in back-to-back grand final wins are James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota, both of whom I think will be starting props for the Aotearoa Kiwis. I think they are the most important players for the Panthers. Because the Broncos, like, why did the Broncos offload so much against the Warriors? A great idea for anyone who's learning about rugby or rugby league is that offloads come from winning the collision. Offloads come from dominating your opponent physically. There are players and there are teams who try to offload as a starting tactic. But offloads come from winning the collision. Sonny Bill was one of the best offloaders because he always poked through the defense. He won the collision. Then he offloads. Against the Warriors especially, the Broncos won the collisions. They were dominant physically. They were more aggressive. So then they offload. And it makes sense, like whether it's poking through the defense or you're tackled but you can still get your arm free. All of that stuff all of that stems from winning the collision, winning the tackle. That is a mark of the Broncos' physicality. Obviously, the names, Payne Haas, Flegler, Carrigan, they're all ridiculous as middle forwards. And I'm just zoning in on that middle forward trio. Fisher, Harris, and Leota can stop that, I believe. And no other team in the NRL can match the Broncos forward pack for physicality and aggression except for the Panthers. And Moses Leota's really kind of hit a neck level this season. His minutes have gone up while Fisher Harris's minutes have gone down. And I think I've dropped this seed a few times, but Moses Leota's equally as physically dominant and aggressive, and all those words I repeat often. He's equal as Fisher Harris now. There was, I think earlier this season, I think he might have been running at Wairau Hargraves, and he's like shouting as he runs. And he's always flying up off the line. He's fast, he's aggressive, he's a monster. And all of that is Fisher Harris as well. Fisher Harris has just been doing it for longer minutes and longer in terms of seasons. But now Fisher Harris, I think, just with his workload for the Kiwis, his workload for the Panthers, they do a better job of managing his minutes and his game time. But now him and Leota are equals to me. And that's what you need to defeat the Broncos. And so, given that rugby league games are won and lost in the middle, given that the Broncos have basically the second best, I believe, middle forward trio in the NRL, given how the Broncos dominate their opponents with their forward pack, for the Panthers to win, I think Fisher Harris is the best player on the park, and I think Leota is right behind him. So I want to see Fisher Harris be the best player on the field. I think the Panthers, everything about the Panthers, their experience, how they play the footy, how they play the rugby league, all of that suggests they are going to win a third grand final in a row. That's just my gut hunch. That's just simplifying everything down. And I think Fisher Harris is the most important player, closely followed by Moses Leota. And that is I'm really excited about that because, there's a chance for them to be the Aotearoa Kiwis starting prop duo. As I said, Wairau Hargraves is out suspended. Jesse Bromwich hasn't been in great form. He's also been out injured. And if you're coming in Aotearoa Kiwis starting middle forward trio, Fisher Harris, Leota, and Joseph Tapine, that is really cool. But yeah, I'm just so excited to see if Fisher Harris and Leota can really slow down the Broncos and set that platform for their team. And if that happens, I can see a situation where old Fisher Harris wins the MVP, whatever it's called, the Churchill, the Clive, and that would be exciting. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, watching that Warriors Broncos semi-final, like the thing that stood out there is just how incredibly dynamic the Broncos were. And like they've been doing that all season, but to see it in a finals game against a really good team, to see them still operating to where they're giving them like as you say, dominating the collisions. They're playing at a quicker tempo. They're more powerful. They seem faster. I thought that was an unbelievably good performance from the Broncos, and the Warriors did quite well to hang in there for a long time, and they were in that game for. I mean, the forward pass from Reece Ross killed it, but I don't think that was the point at which the Warriors were, close to getting back into it. The point was when they had it was late, right at the end of the first half. The Broncos made a couple errors, which would make sense. A big dynamic team making mistakes later in the half when you're a bit more fatigued, right before you get that break. And the Warriors had, I think, 3 consecutive sets where they were in good starting field position, and they made errors all 3 times. And it's like, well, there's your chance. You got to get it back within 6 points at halftime. Who knows? But so it goes. Like the Broncos got out in front because it's just that word dynamic. It just stuck with me watching them, because it's not just that they're fast, it's that they're powerful, it's that they're strong, it's that they seem to be thinking ahead. I guess that's the advantage you have, is when you can boss that stuff, you can sort of, if you're in control, you get to actually make the next decision, because you know what situation you're going to be in, because you're controlling the game. And yeah, like the workload of someone like Kerrigan was insane, and it's the same across the board with them. But like the Panthers kind of did that to the Warriors as well. They did it in a different way. Like the Panthers are more efficient. The Panthers are sort of like they don't make mistakes. They're so classy. They're so like they flow like a river when they're on attack. Cleary just makes great decisions over and over and over. The Broncos was something we talked about a lot in the preview last week. Is the Broncos take risks and make mistakes, but also they have this X factor that's just a step above. I think that's a fascinating matchup, because there's 2 teams who can. It stems from the same thing. Is just how like it's dudes like Fisher Harris and Payne Haas and what. It stems from there, but then the way they use the control and the dominance that they earn is a little bit different. And I think it's a fascinating grand final. And I think we saw very, 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 very clearly, for anyone who didn't think so leading into the preliminary finals, these are the 2 best teams, and they absolutely deserve to be there. And how that plays out in the grand final, I'd have to look back on a few of them, but I don't know how many times it's felt like we've had the 2 best teams throughout the whole season in a grand final recently. It often feels like there's, the Panthers make it, and then there's, the Eels made it one year, the Raiders made it one year, just getting in the form team, but not necessarily the best team throughout the year. There might be a couple, like there was Panthers Storm, was it last year or the year before? You could make a case for, but this is without a doubt, like the 2 best teams from week 1 through to the grand final are there. And how it plays out from here is an interesting test of 2 elite teams doing elite things, but with slightly different sort of secondary intentions on top of how they set things up.
I think there's a chance for Fisher Harris to double down on being the best prop in the world of rugby league, because you think Fanua Blake, he won the Dally M Prop of the Year, I think. Right, so anytime it's mentioned Fanua Blake, he's one of the best. But then there's Payne Haas. Well, I think Fisher Harris is better than Fanua Blake, straight up. And we're going to see if Fisher Harris is better than Payne Haas, because Payne Haas is going to be trying to stop the Panthers' middles, and Fisher Harris is going to try to be stopping the Broncos' middles as well. And I think if Fisher Harris turns out like a dominant grand final performance, his third grand final win in a row alongside Leota, I think Fisher Harris is undisputedly the best prop in the NRL.
Well, it's either him or Blake Lawrie, so yeah.
That was a pause for effect there.
I said either. It doesn't mean that there's 100% voting in one direction, but it's like, one of the two of them.
Moses Leota is way better than Blake Lawrie. Like, that is for sure.
A lot of people are better than Blake Lawrie. I do like Blake Lawrie, though.
Yeah, of course you do. So that's interesting. I think Scott Sorensen and Jordan Riki are going to be playing directly against each other as well. Jordan Riki on the right edge for the Broncos, Scott Sorensen on the left edge. Sorensen is like an Aotearoa Kiwis player. Like, all the Panthers players, they're already Aotearoa Kiwis players. Jordan Riki, he could be a starting edge forward for the Kiwis. He's definitely going to be in the squad. And then I've said it a few times, Arthurs might be in the mix, especially because I think Greg Marsu's going to play for Samoa. But you still have for the Kiwis, Rapana, Watene-Zelezniak, Mulatalo, and Isako. Mulatalo and Isako, I believe they're going to stay with the Kiwis for the next few years under Michael Maguire. If Arthurs isn't, like, I don't think he's better than those four wingers, and you only need two wingers, so there's a lot of wingers available. Arthurs will definitely be in the Aotearoa A squad, which is a interesting thing to keep an eye on because there will be a second-tier Aotearoa Kiwis group named alongside the international test matches coming up. So I think Arthurs is certified of that tier. I can see him getting into a Kiwis squad as kind of a depth development opportunity for him as well. And it's like these two teams. So Fisher Harris, he's from the Hokianga in Northland. Jordan Riki is from Christchurch. So the players in this grand final from Aotearoa come from the far north and like halfway down the South Island, Christchurch. That's the sign of the Kiwi-NRL times, and this goes back to the state of rugby league in Aotearoa. We're talking about Fisher Harris as chasing the best prop in the game. He's from a small town in Hokianga. Jordan Riki, and I wrote this in the preview, like, these players all have exceptional mana in terms of how they play rugby league. Their effort areas, their physicality, their vitality. Like, Ricky's cut from that cloth. He doesn't put up big stats, but he's always leading the kick chase. He's always putting a shot on. He's always covering inside channels and working hard for his teammates. And that is the energy that gives you consistent game time in the NRL as a youngster, coming straight out of Aotearoa. Because the Broncos signed him as soon as he left school. I think they signed him before he left school, St. Thomas of Canterbury, and like many great of the best recruitment stories from Aotearoa, like the best NRL teams, they cater to the needs of the junior. So if they need to stay in New Zealand and finish their school, be around their family, that's all good. Ricky finished school, goes to the Broncos. Within a couple years, maybe 2 years, he's playing NRL. He's a starting edge forward, 80 minutes every game. That's because he has the same effort and attitude and work rate and mana as Fisher Harris, as Leota, as Scott Sorensen. And you're seeing seeds of that in how Jesse Arthurs plays as well. Like Jesse Arthurs runs really hard. And I actually think he's got potential to be, like, compared to Watene-Zelezniak, Arthurs is faster. He's got a bit more zip, bit better footwork. He's just not as experienced. But I think Arthurs has potential to be a high-quality Aotearoa Kiwis winger as well. And he's a notable junior because ever since he emerged through the Gold Coast system, he was in the Toda Here program back in 2016. He goes to Storm, Rabbitohs, Titans, then to the Broncos, Loandale to the Warriors, back to the Broncos. He's been on a bit of a journey, but he's always been in the New Zealand Rugby League mixer, and he's always commanded an opportunity. Like, he's down in the Broncos depth chart. The Warriors want him on a loan deal. Like, he's always commanded a next opportunity, and right now he's keeping Corey Oates, Dean Mariner out of this team. And that's a good sign for him. I also like, so the Panthers, they've got Dayon Amatuanai and Preston Ricky in their basically reserve grade team. Amatuanai is a winger from Otaki. He came through Hatupaora College in the kind of wider Wellington, Manawatu region, Warriors SG Ball. And then with Preston Ricky, where's Preston Ricky from? Rawini, the Hokianga region. So the Panthers have 2 players from Hokianga in their system right now. Preston Ricky moves down to Auckland. He's in the Warriors system. Preston Ricky and Amatuanai go to Redcliffe with the Warriors, and then the Panthers sign them from Redcliffe Warriors. They are 2 youngsters who are cooking in the Panthers system slowly, and that's the key thing here. Amatuanai, he's moving between Jersey Flegg, New South Wales Cup. He's done that for 2 seasons. Preston Ricky's played New South Wales Cup for 2 seasons. Neither of them has come close to playing NRL for the Panthers because they're just in the system, working hard week after week, and they will play NRL for the Panthers, I believe. But it's that slow grind, that slow development process, which didn't happen for Dean Mariner or Xavier Willison in the Broncos system, but because of the Broncos' depth, they're not getting the game time, so that's where things slow down. That's where you get the development progress made. But because I think they've both made their debuts maybe last year. Willison might have been the year before. And they're still not top 17 players at the end of 2023. Even though, as I've said a few times, they would be playing top 17 at a lot of other NRL teams. Dean Mariner has a chance to represent Samoa, I reckon. Again, Aotearoa Kiwis, they're flush with outside backs. He could play Aotearoa A. But if your decision is between Aotearoa A and Samoa or Tonga, you're probably going to play international footy, aren't you? So that's all good. Willison's a Cook Islands international already. He's from the Waikato. And the Broncos, they've also got Kaius Fa'atili, who's from Christchurch, same school as Jordan Ricky, same rep teams as Jordan Ricky. He's with Wynnum, and there's another notable Broncos junior from New Zealand. Hopefully I get the name right. Nathaniel Tangamaitaiti. He's from Ellerslie in Auckland. He is with Wynnum as well in the Broncos system. Both teams have Kiwi-NRL juniors from around Aotearoa in their system, and both teams have the slow development process going on as well. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they are the best teams, and that's how they operate with their junior players.
Yeah, well, that was something we talked about last week, wasn't it? About how the best teams put themselves in a position to develop players better, and then they do develop players better if they want to be the teams who then turn that into dynasties do take advantage of that and bring those guys in, which gives them multi-layered teams where it's not just, we have this great 17, this year is going to be incredible, maybe next year is going to be incredible, but will we still be the same team in 5 years? Unlikely, without being able to refresh it along the way. But those best teams are able to do that, and it's by thinking ahead. It's by having those systems, and you got to have them in place even before you get to that spot if you want to keep it rolling along in a way that the Panthers have done. Like, they are the dynastic team of the I don't know. At this point, you start getting to where you have to begin to compare them to what the Melbourne Storm have done under the tenure of Craig Bellamy, or what the Broncos did when Wayne Bennett was there through the 90s and beyond, long before stuff I can remember. There's a few others in there. And the Broncos are trying to be that team. And, the Warriors are trying to be that team as well. They're not as far, well, they're a lot closer now than they were a year ago, put it that way. I'll say it again, that's going to be a fascinating grand final.
We've also got the NRL Women's Grand Final, Titans versus Knights. Titans have Niall Williams-Guthrie, who I mentioned on Monday, reminds me of Steve Matai, which is as good as you want to be for a centre, especially a centre from Aotearoa, and Georgia Hale, the best tackler in NRLW by a significant margin. It's not even close. That's Georgia Hale. And Georgia Hale is in her best year as far as tackling, running, and even winning goes. The Knights have Shanice Parker and Abigail Roach as their centers. I think Williams Guthrie will line up against Roach, which will be really interesting to see how that goes. I'll dive into that before I do the preview there on the website. And they've also got Lyshawn Albert-Jones playing edge forward. Obviously, you see the headlines, Niall Williams Guthrie, sister of Sonny Bill, like all that stuff. Again, these things run deep. Like Lyshawn Albert-Jones, I believe, is the niece of Stacey Jones.
Hey, All Blacks assistant coach. Oh no, wait.
Not a good All Blacks team though. I don't think it's going to work out for Stacey Jones and Mooks. Although Mooks, he's a much better assistant coach than head coach. So as long as he's not the All Blacks head coach, he should be all right. And obviously Mooks is looking after All Blacks defense. Stacey Jones looking after All Blacks attack. That makes way more sense.
Teaching Bowden Barrett how to do the chip and chase.
If you're following the Wallabies recipe though, Brett Hodgson, he's a fullback who's way better at attack.
Yeah.
Can you just Google this while I'm looking to confirm? Like Brett Hodgson, I think he's defense coach because it makes no sense. But Lyshawn Albert-Jones, she was a half for the Kiwi Ferns as recently as the World Cup last year. Abigail Roach was also, she got games in the halves for the Kiwi Ferns at the World Cup. So now Roach is playing centre. Lyshawn Albert-Jones is playing edge forward. The Lyshawn Albert-Jones, Roach was playing Super Rugby Aupiki earlier this year before joining the Knights. Lyshawn Albert-Jones was playing, I think she was playing for Mounties in the New South Wales Women's Premiership earlier this year. Williams Guthrie came from Sevens Rugby League. Hale's been NRLW. I think Hale, she goes back and forth with Leeds in England between NRLW seasons. And all of these players are Kiwi Ferns eligible as well. I said Hale and the Knights trio, they've already played for the Kiwi Ferns. Williams Guthrie is going to be in the Kiwi Ferns. And the theme for the men, Aotearoa Kiwis players in the NRL Grand Final, or Kiwi-NRL players, is their efforts, their mana, their attitude. The 1%ers, the small details, they all epitomise that effort and energy. Kiwi Ferns storylines for the NRL women is the depth. Because there's 3 centres in this grand final, let alone the 5 other centres playing NRLW. You got Lyshawn Albert-Jones playing edge forward. You're going to have Otessa Pule from the Roosters playing edge forward. Kere Hatina Matua from the Raiders is an edge forward as well. There's a lot of depth on show here for the Kiwi Ferns in NRLW, and the 2 best teams are the Titans and the Knights, and they both have a lot of talent across their whole teams, but sneakily, these Kiwi Fern players are really, really good. And they're really, really good in the 2 best teams for NRLW. That is really impressive, I believe.
Can tell you that Brett Hodgson is the defensive coach for the Wallabies.
Yeah, so that means Jason Ryles is the attack coach, which makes extra no sense. Because Hodgson's an attacking player.
It doesn't say on their thing. I found a thing where it announced the had changes and Ryles wasn't there because that was from
I think he's the attack
from
coach.
May, and he's come in since then.
Yeah.
So he must be the attack coach because there's no one else listed as attack coach on their coaching staff website.
Ryles is a defense coach usually. I think he was a defense coach for England under Eddie Jones, and I think most of his NRL coaching has been primarily defense focused as well. So the All Blacks part of this means that Stephen Kearney Mooks is running the All Blacks attack, and Stacey Jones is running the All Blacks defense, which is bonkers.
Brad Davis was the attack coach appointed in May, which is what I was talking about in the earlier thing, and he quit in August 17th. Um,
That's where
he
Riles
quit
came.
like pretty close to the thing, and Riles came in. It says here, Rugby League confirmed Davis, a former rugby league player and longtime coach in the United Kingdom, would return to deal with a personal matter or whatever. So that's why he quit. But he was a rugby league guy as well, apparently. So it's just a like for like swap in the end.
How not to win rugby union games? Hire rugby league people to do weird jobs. Like it's great
It's like
stuff.
getting baseball players to coach the Black Caps, I guess.
Um, well, we've already made the All Blacks comparison. You know, like it works out well. Mooks
Yeah,
and
sure.
Stacey Jones.
We take it further and get like, I don't know, Brad Sorensen or someone to be the next Black Caps attack coach. Teach him how to slike some sixes cross batted.
You know, like so Razor's mate Ryan from Canterbury, forwards coach, like really good coach who's on the All Black staff right now. He's doing a lot of great stuff. No, don't worry about him. We got Stacey Jones.
Yeah.